The most common reason a Yu-Gi-Oh card is banned is because its existence is deemed heavily problematic in the competitive meta. Whether said card enables first turn kills like Firewall Dragon and Mass Driver, causes irreparable damage to the game state, a la Fiberjar and Chaos Emperor Dragon, or is simply too difficult to counter, as was the case with Masterpiece and Apocryphal Towers. The card's fate is ultimately the same, a trip to ban camp where usually cards stay until they're significantly weaker, errated, or they're no longer exploitable on the same level that they were when initially banned. Usually in Yu-Gi-Oh, one time is all you need. A card spends a few years on the list and it's never a problem again, thanks to natural power creep in our game. However, thanks to new cards and mechanics being added all the time in the Yu-Gi-Oh, sometimes a few cards actually do buck the trend and reach that meta-defining level even years after they're unbanned. Welcome to another episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Banlist History, and in this video, we'll be covering exactly that. Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards that were actually banned twice. Today you'll discover which of our thousands of cards received that honor, why, and how the community responded to it. Per usual, this list will be solely focusing and covering the TCG's banlist history. But before we jump into the video, if you like learning about Yu-Gi-Oh! History or just enjoy my videos in general, then help the channel grow by giving the video a thumbs up to help recommend it to more viewers like you. You can also comment your thoughts below and share the video on social media with your friends. Lastly, why don't you give me a follow at MegaCapitalG on Twitter. 2005, in October, Delinquent Duo, Graceful Charity, and Mirror Force. All three cards were first banned August 2004. The second ban list of 2005 was the first time we would see a Yu-Gi-Oh card be banned twice. This was following Yu-Gi-Oh's iconic GOAT format, and that ban list was pretty large, with 8 cards being banned. Delinquent Duel and Graceful Charity were both S-tier powerhouses that could provide loads of numerical advantage right from the jump. Graceful Charity was the epitome of advancing your game state and strategy, while Delinquent Duel was king at punishing your opponent. Both cards were justifiably banned on the list, and honestly, it's kind of a wonder why either was initially unbanned from the August 2004 list, which of course was the list that brought us the concept of banned cards to begin with. I'd probably say especially Delinquent Duo, as there was basically no skill involved with the card. You simply activated it and tore apart your opponent's opening hand while making a +1 in the process. I should probably point out that in these years, Konami seemed to have this weird idea that one hand-ripping card was okay in a format because they banned Confiscation specifically to bring Delinquent Duo back into the game, then reversed that decision on the very next ban list. Graceful Charity, on the other hand, did actually require skill to maximize its potential, even with Sinister Serpent in the game. But the card also allowed players to dig a little too deep into their decks. And by this point, pretty much all duelists had caught on as to how to use discarding to their benefit to set up future plays. Mirror Force is the only head scratcher here, and believe me, this isn't hindsight. I'll say the same thing now as what I said in 2004 on our very first ban list. Did Mirror Force really need to be banned in the first place? I personally don't think it deserved it, let alone to be banned twice. Sure, the ceiling of the card was almost unrivaled when it came to traps back during the Duel Monsters era. However, there were loads of counters to the card, including the age-old tactic of simply putting some monsters in defense mode before attacking, which actually was created because of Mirror Force the card. A lot of times Mirror Force yielded about the same or less results than its rival Torrential Tribute, and absolutely no one had a problem with that card. So I just fail to understand as to why Konami felt that Mirror Force needed to go, and most players were puzzled as well. 2006, in April, Dark Hole, first banned August 2004. During the GX era, Konami did a lot of ban list swapping when it came to cards that filled similar roles or ones that they thought would have a similar effect on the competitive format. As mentioned earlier, they would take off a banned card and switch it out with another, only to reverse that decision on the next list, so on and so forth. This was almost certainly their justification and mentality when it came to Dark Hole's re-ban, as it was basically swapped out with Mirror Force. I think Konami didn't want to increase the number of mass monster removal cards in the metagame above 2. This is of course counting Torrential Tribute. This can be seen on the October 2005 list where they banned Mirror Force to bring back Dark Hole. players were largely on board with this move since Dark Hole was the much faster card, and ironically, this move turned out to be a very good one, as the April 2006 format's top dog was Chaos Return, and Dark Hole in the game might have facilitated more return from the different dimension-powered OTKs than would end up already existing. 2007, in September, Confiscation, which was first banned April 2005, Snatch Steal, first banned September 2006, and Ring of Destruction, which was first banned September 2005. I'll be cut and dry with Snatch Steal. This card was inexplicably unbanned on the March 2007 ban list. I'm talking for like no reason at all. It was a shock to absolutely no one in the game when it instantly became a staple in basically every competitive deck. The 2007 metagame as a whole was faster than 2006, and the interesting thing was Snatch Steal was even better the second time around, from pretty much the jump. The card never had any real consequences or drawbacks, and Konami knew that they made a very clear and evident mistake with unbanning the card, which is why it was rebanned a format later. Ring of Destruction was an interesting one. Without a doubt, one of the most powerful traps in Yu-Gi-Oh history, and another card that during the GX era, Konami played a bit of banlist tennis with. Ring was the most versatile removal card in the game by a mile and could easily be used for offense or defensively. Attacking with a monster, then immediately ringing that monster to end games was super common in those days. On its own merits, the card was probably a little too good, but what I believe Konami really didn't like about Ring of Destruction was the fact that it was the only commonly played meta card that could easily cause draws. When they first banned the card post-GOAT format, many believed that it was an overreaction, and when they unbanned it for Snatch Steal on the September 2006 list, many welcomed it because Ring actually held some risk attached to it and there was some skill expression with the card. But the causing draws elements hadn't changed on the card at all. In fact, it was even more profound in 2007. Confiscation's second banning was overdue. Again, for some reason, Konami seemed completely fine with one degenerate hand-ripping card in the metagame as long as it was only one card. And I think that they considered Confiscation the least of all the evils between Delinquent Duo itself and the Forceful Century. What changed here was the rise of Trap Dust Shoot in late 2007. Now all of a sudden, players were once again opening with two hand-ripping cards, which of course Konami couldn't stomach. Confiscation should have stayed banned and never returned in the first place, but its second banning, in my opinion, was largely due to the rise of Trap Dust Shoot, which of course was limited on this same list as well. 2008. In March, Breaker the Magical Warrior and Magician of Faith. Both were first banned March 2007. I absolutely have to talk about these two cards together, because still to this day, this is the weirdest and without a doubt, one of the stupidest banlist moves you will ever see. When Magician of Faith and Breaker were first banned in 2007, the bans were legitimate. Breaker had been a competitive staple for years and, in my opinion, literally had no flaws as a card. Magician of Faith had a gigantic power ceiling and could be set from the deck with the competitive Apprentice engine. Fair enough. Where it gets weird, however, is when you realize that both cards were banned in March 2007, then unbanned in September 2007, only to be, get this, banned again on the very next list of March 2008. What the actual F? It made no sense at all to bring both cards back if you were just going to immediately re-ban them again. Honestly, it made Konami look like they didn't actually know what they wanted or what they were doing when it came to these two cards specifically. I mean, they really were just playing ping pong with these two cards. 2009, in September, Monster Reborn. First banned August 2004. Monster Reborn was another casualty of the first Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG ban list in 2004, and it actually stayed there for 3.5 years. What brought the card back wasn't anything noble or a loss of power. It was Konami's tried and tested ban card swap theory and ideology. Just like Delinquent Duo and Confiscation or Dark Hole for Mirror Force before it, Konami just wanted to shake things up, but didn't want to add another Monster Revival card into the metagame. Their solution was to bring back Monster Reborn, by, get this, banning the inferior Call of the Haunted on the March 2008 ban list. This decision was an absolute disaster, and I guess in a small part, well, maybe a fairly large part, led to one of the best and key opening plays for the dreaded Dad Return Tier 0 deck, which required an emergency ban list, by the way. Honestly, this move alone signaled that Konami wanted the game to be exponentially faster than in prior years, but when things got out of hand, with Dark Strike Fighter and all, in textbook Konami fashion, they completely reversed ship and banned Monster Reborn again to unban Call of the Haunted. 2012, in September, Sangan, first banned August 2004. Sangan was the first example of a card that became broken again, largely in a different way than what got it banned in the first place. When Sangan was banned during DM, it was a super solid monster to put on the field at pretty much all stages of the game that when it died, replaced itself with one of a myriad of monsters in your deck. Great card all around and useful in nearly every strategy in the game. However, during Zexal, Sangan became a legitimate playmaker. This is mostly thanks in part to Tour Guide from the Underworld and her ability to pull Sangan straight from the deck. This play was absolutely meta-defining and had zero downsides. If the opponent used removal, like Torrential Tribute, the Sangan would search another playmaking card, like, well, just for instance, another copy of Tour Guide or Rescue Rabbit. If they didn't impede the play, they'd be letting their opponent get access to a powerful rank 3 Exceed monster, like Wind-Up Carriers and Mighty or Leviair the Sea Dragon, both of which would create a snowball of advantage and momentum. It's also worth mentioning that in addition to combo starters, Sangan could fetch high-impact hand traps to impede the opponent and protect your board, like Max C and Effect Veiler. Honestly, in this format, the card basically covered everything. 2013, in September, Heavy Storm, first banned September 2010. Heavy Storm had always been a very divisive and highly debated card in the competitive community. At times, it was argued that it was simply too powerful of a blowout card when used against stun or trap-dependent decks. On the other hand, some formats without Heavy Storm felt completely dominated by trap cards, to the point that a lot of duelists often had to resort to using things like 7 Tools of the Bandit and Forbidden Lance to counter them. Storm's second banning wasn't generally met with tons of displeasure or support. This could be because this specific ban list is when the TCG and OCG ban lists completely diverged, and that was everyone's main focus. It could also have to do with the fact that this was also one of the largest ban lists in history, and maybe Heavy Storm simply got lost in all the confusion and moving parts. Most duelists simply saw it as a casualty of the colossal list and a card that Yu-Gi-Oh would be fine with or without. Ironically, I believe that people still largely feel this way about the card. 2020, in April, Glow Up Bulb, first banned March 2012. Without a doubt, one of the most notorious members of the devious plant engine from the 5Ds era, Glow Up Bulb was always incredibly strong for synchro summoning, often being able to be used twice in a single turn as a tuner. When that engine received many hits in its time in the meta had faded, Glow Up Bulb looked as if it was destined to be a card that was going to be competitively irrelevant for the rest of its days. However, the new Link Summon mechanic breathed incredible life and potential back into a card that was always high in that regard. With Link Summoning, you generally didn't need to worry about matching levels or counting up specific ones. You just wanted bodies on field. That was something that a card like Glow Up Bulb specialized in. With links in the game, Bulb was now a normal summon instant link too. This was especially important because the all-powerful Christian Halifabrats was about to be released into TCG, and it summoning Glow Up Bulb for insane combos had pretty much become meta-breaking in the OCG. Considering that Bulb and Hulk both facilitated each other, Konami and most in the Yu-Gi-Oh community agreed these two simply couldn't exist in the same format together for the sake of having anything resembling a healthy metagame. Ultimately, this was a preemptive ban to stop those plays. Glow Up Bulb was ultimately an instance of a card clearly designed to facilitate one mechanic, but was even more exploitable by a new one, very similar to Level Eater and Go Through the Vague Shadow. 2021, in July, Zoodiac Trident, First banned September 2017. The entire Zoodiac archetype stormed this game like a whirlwind and was arguably a mistake from a conceptual standpoint. Zoodiac Trident might have been the most meta-defining card of them all, as she warped the meta to the point where continuous traps and field spells were pretty much, very near unplayable. Due to the sheer overwhelming dominance of the archetype and her impact, her first banning was fully justified. However, after being unbanned, she wasn't quite the terror that we had once known. Sure, she was still a strong opening play with free disruption, but she was nothing close to her meta-defining days of the past, and honestly, her importance in her own dedicated deck had pretty much been surpassed by AA Arsenal Zeus. Sure, Trident could still facilitate some niche opening, really cool plays in Zoodiac Eldritch builds, or she was very strong in Zoodiac Tri-Brigade, but this ban felt unnecessary as the card's power no longer justified the hit, and most in the community expressed dismay upon seeing the ban list. 2022, in February, Imperial Order, first banned August 2004. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the first ever erratic card to be rebanned. Traditionally, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelists aren't fans of erratas to ban cards because often is the case, as with Sinister Serpent, Brain Control, or Destiny Hero Disc Commander, Konami has a tendency to go completely overboard and destroy the card's competitive playability, like completely. Ironically, this is not at all what happened when Konami errated Imperial Order to simply have a higher maintenance cost, but still the same insane power ceiling that the card had back in DM, which got it banned in the first place. While the card was initially suppressed by powerhouses like Zoodiac Trident and True Draco, eventually, as we received more powerful spells, Imperial Order became more prominent and powerful in the competitive meta. Eventually, IO got to a near auto-win status, as it could completely smother entire archetypes like Sky Striker or nullify board-breaking spells like Lightning Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster, Dark Ruler No More, or Forbidden Droplet. This was a banning that players practically begged for, and I'm talking about both times actually. And there you have it, every card in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG's ban list history that has been banned at least twice. If you enjoyed this video, or more importantly, you learned something, then do me a very big favor and give the video a thumbs up. Also, you can let me know your thoughts below. I do read all the comments. Thank you very much for watching as always, and stay tuned, subscribe for more videos just like this.